time to tantalize your earbuds with creative makers and shakers. It's Creative Living, the podcast with Jane Klaus.
Welcome to Creative Living, where we help you live better creatively. I'm Jane Klaus. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited about today's show because my guest turned her creative passion into a thriving business. I'm talking about a 6-figure business, but she's also inspiring you to do the same. Chloe Winstanley is part of a new wave of creatives who are redefining what it means to make a living. I know we hear side hustle all the time. Can you make a living at your side hustle? We're going to find out, but I'm also curious if this new way to make a living is a millennial thing, or can anyone jump on the bandwagon? I know we're a lot of creative people out there. We make a lot of things. We do a lot of things. She's going to answer that, if everybody can do it, and a lot more. Chloe Winstanley has an incredible story. In 2021, she launched New Zealand's first ever craft workshop business, Creative Otautahi. And just 2 years later, she is celebrating 100K in business. It's all while working part-time. Now she's taking that knowledge and she's bringing it to you on a bigger stage, teaching a master class called On Your Way to 100K. It's a course designed to help anyone, no matter what your age, your skill level, turn your creative passion into a fun, flexible, and profitable business. So I am happy to welcome to the show the amazing Chloe Winstanley. Hey, Chloe.
Hi, Jane.
Chloe, you launched New Zealand's first ever craft workshop business, Creative Otautahi. What does that mean?
Creative Otautahi, that is the, Otautahi is the Te Reo Māori word for Christchurch. Te Reo Māori is the indigenous population in New Zealand, and Christchurch is just where I started. So it's just basically the origin story of my workshops. That is the first business that I created, and that is still running in New Zealand, hosting workshops.
And so Creative Otautahi is the name of your workshop business.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So what does it mean that you started the first ever craft workshop? How does that get started?
So basically the business structure is a lot like Paint and Sip, only you're offering different kinds of crafts. And so I think of it as like a multi-craft workshop business, which means you're offering things like polymer clay earring making and terrarium making and pretty much anything under the sun that you can come up with that is somehow related to crafts and being creative.
So talk about where you started, because we all have a craft of choice. Like, I'm an equal opportunity crafter. Like, I'll make anything. I'll make anything once, but we always have one that we prefer. What is your background? What's your first craft? What do you love to make?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of a multi-crafter as well, and I guess that's why this workshop business worked for me. But at its core, I mostly think of myself as a polymer clay artist. So that's how I got started. And I'm a self-taught polymer clay artist. So I got started during the pandemic when I had a little baby at home and everything was locked down. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do to keep myself sane? And so I started dabbling with polymer clay, and so yeah, that's what I think of myself as when I think about, like, you know, what is my craft, and so that's how I got started with the workshops. Is it sort of just naturally developed from me making stuff for myself and selling earrings online, and going to craft fairs selling the earrings, and then eventually that kind of just naturally grew to me teaching other people how to make earrings.
I mean, so much to talk about here. A lot of businesses, a lot of hobbies were just created during the pandemic, and babies weren't created during the pandemic as well. But a lot of things changed, and here we are this many years later, and I feel like you just like had enough guts to say, I'm good enough at this. I'm going to show you how to do it. When did that flip in your mind? Because I think a lot of people may have like an imposter syndrome. Like, I'm really good at XYZ. I don't feel like I can demonstrate or teach somebody how to do it. And if you're newly in polymer clay, when did you go, yeah, I can show you how to do this?
Yeah, and I mean, imposter syndrome is massive, and I come across that heaps with my coaching business, where I engage with other crafters, and they're like, I love my crafts, but I could never teach people. I'm not a professional artist. But it's like, well, I was a self-taught polymer clay artist, and I was doing it for like 3 months before I decided, no, actually, I'm going to give it a go teaching people. And I think the way that I got over the imposter syndrome and just like the general anxiety of hosting people and being like the main center point of it, and being responsible for making sure that they had a good time, was that I just started off small. And so my first workshop only had 5 people, and I priced it super low, so it was like low stakes. And so I think that's why it worked, was because I just took it really slow at the start, and just like kind of tried to stay within my comfort zone as much as possible, even though I am naturally an introvert. And so it was already kind of out of my comfort zone, but I was just kind of like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway because it feels right and it feels fun.
Yeah. I love that you used your compass of it felt good and it felt right. So I went with it. And I think starting small for anything is a great idea. When you just kept with it. I mean, the dollars and cents and the commitment and the time at that point in your path or your journey, did you have anything to lose? Because I mean, it's like, I know you had a new baby at home, you have a husband at home, you have 5 people, now you've got 40 people. You got to do the math, right? So you got your location, you've got supplies, you've got your time planning. Then what are you charging people? And then what does it look like on the P&L list or P&L profit list at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So was that business part of it? Was it hard for you, or did you just go with it? Felt good. It felt right.
I mean, it was like the numbers made sense because I was making so much more than I was making with craft fairs. With craft fairs, I was selling, I'd make a pair of earrings and sell them for 25 New Zealand dollars, which is like approximately like 17 or something, $17. And whereas with the workshops, I was charging people 100 New Zealand dollars per person, which is like 70 US dollars. And so, you can like do the math. So it's like if I, most of my workshops that I did by myself, I hosted 20 people. So it's like 20 people at $100 each, that's $2,000. And then my expenses were not too much, just because like my biggest expense was the extras that I had. Like I also supplied food and alcohol, so I'd pay for an alcohol license, because polymer clay is like relatively inexpensive, and I was also using affordable community centers as the venues. So it was like I was keeping my costs down. My advertising costs, like my advertising spend, was quite low. It was maybe like between 10 and 20% of my overall like profit. I think because the concept that I had was quite unique, it made it stand out to people with the ads. And so, and also because the nature of the workshops, it's like I would advertise and I would reach like one person in a friend group. And then it's like the kind of thing that people wouldn't come to alone. They'd bring like, 3 or 4 friends. So it's like you only have to reach one person in the friend group for them to then share it with their whole friend group. And then, you've advertised to one person, but then you get 5 or 6 orders come through. And I think because I'd seen that paint and sip was popular, but I'd also seen that people were getting sick of it because it was just like the same thing all the time, and that people wanted different crafts. So it's just like playing into that same idea of, people want something fun to do with their friends on a Friday, Saturday night. It's like low stakes entertainment. They're not really they don't care too much about what they're making. They're more there for the experience of just having a good time with their friends and, maybe having a glass of wine at the same time. So it was just like,
plus drinks are included. So why would you not? Yeah. Would you do it once a week? Like how often, once you started, because we're going to get into why people should start and who should start. But when you started, you did the first one, you had 5 people. You're like, all right, let me try it again. Was it weekly or was it a slow, haul in the beginning? I understand why you would say I'm spending 2 hours making earrings for 17 US dollars. Like that doesn't make sense. But when you're able to hang out with people, did it start slowly, or were they word of mouth spreading and they all wanted to be a part of it?
I think at the start it was small, like going from, starting to make polymer clay earrings to eventually hosting 20 people. Maybe that took about a month or a month and a half to kind of, like, I had to spend a lot of money to get all my materials, like all the investment costs of making sure that I had enough like polymer clay tools and mats and everything, like all of those things for 20 people. That was probably maybe the most challenging part, like doing that with not a lot of like money to put down on it. Then when the ball kind of got rolling, got kind of popular quite quickly. Yeah, by the time that I was hosting 20 people at a workshop, it was kind of like, well, this is really fun. I can make a good amount of money, and it's only like maybe 3 or 4 hours work.
Your time
including
commitment.
including the time to like set up and break down like the venue. And so in that respect, it was just like, it just made sense to, spend my time doing that rather than go to craft fairs and try to sell my earrings. I mean, it's nice to meet other creatives, and I made a lot of friends, and kind of like, I felt like a part of the creative community when I was doing craft fairs, but it wasn't really something that was going to keep my business afloat. And so to answer your earlier question of how often I would do it, I had a lot of energy at the start. Like, this is the thing about workshops is it is tiring. Like, it's hard work. It's fun, but you're also like dealing with people a lot of the time. It can be stressful. But I was doing workshops on like Friday nights, Saturday nights. Sometimes I would do multiple sessions on a Saturday. So I would do one earlier in the day, and then I would do another one straight after. But because of the fact that it's like a girls' night out kind of thing, you are constrained to the fact that people are probably only going to want to do it on Fridays and Saturday nights.
You're starting the business, and so you have to get through all of these hurdles and do a couple of double duty days, and then you figure out what works, and then you're 5 people and 20 people, then 40 people, you're figuring out the expense. You're from New Zealand, you live in Washington State now, but you started this in New Zealand, which I opened up the show with, that you started New Zealand's first ever craft workshop business. Crafting is big all over the world, we know that.
Yeah.
Obviously, New Zealand is a lot smaller than the United States. How do you, if you started New Zealand's first ever craft workshop business, do you feel like now in the US you see other online workshops? Like, how does that compare to what you did then and what you're seeing now? Is there still a market for it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think so. I think that you always need to do your research ahead of time, and you need to be like, okay, so I'm in, X city. I need to do my research and see what the competition is. I need to see if there's anyone else out there in my city running my kind of crafting workshop. So like, figure out what your craft is that you want to do, and then just do a Google search to see if anyone else is doing it. And if someone already is, then it is going to be kind of like, okay, so, are you going to price yours lower than them? Are you going to be able to offer a point of difference? What is going to make people want to come to your workshop instead of this other one? So you do have to get a little bit creative there, where it's like you have to figure out, okay, if someone else is already doing it, like, it's like you have to kind of think outside the box a little bit and be like, if someone else is already doing what I'm doing, I either have to come up with a different craft, or I have to be able to price it low so that it's competitive and also make it stand out. So I think, having a point of difference is really important. And I was quite fortunate with my polymer clay workshops that I ran in New Zealand, because I was doing body positive polymer clay, and so nobody else was doing that.
All right. So talk about, though, in-person workshops versus these virtual workshops. And we know during the pandemic, everything went virtual. So everyone started, it changed everything. It changed meetings, it changed work, it changed the way we do TV, it changed the way you make something. So all of the virtual workshops and all of these different online platforms where you could learn, you pay a subscription, you watch the class, you get so many classes a month or whatever. Talk about the difference between the in-person workshops that you do versus just, hey, listen, I'm snowing outside, I'm cold, I'm going to stay at home and take this workshop. Is there a difference? And do you feel like, I love that in-person energy that you get. Is that part of it for you? Why do you think that it's better to be in person?
I mean, I'm not an expert on online workshops because that's not something that I ever did. But it's a really interesting question, especially in a post-COVID universe. And so I think that a big thing about the workshops that I did was that people really wanted face-to-face coming out of the pandemic. People wanted to be around other people. They wanted to be out doing something. They wanted to be out of the house. I think that if you were looking at doing online workshops, there's definitely an opportunity there, and there are different benefits to it, because obviously if you're doing it online, you're not constrained to how many people are in my city. You're suddenly able to open it up to, the entire world. And so then, then maybe you're making a bit more money from that, but you'd probably also have to price it lower. So it's like just a balancing act of being like, do I want to have, 100 people at this online workshop if I'm able to get that many signups, and maybe I price it like 70% lower, but I'm still making money from those extra attendees? Or do I want to do something in person? So I think it's hard to compare. It's probably just down to like, what you're teaching. Is it like a craft that would work for that kind of online format? Those are just the thoughts that come to mind immediately when I think of online workshops.
The reason why I asked you about in-person versus virtual, this entire podcast, the show Creative Living, is meant to inspire people to create. Take 1 hour a day, create something, whatever it means to you, whatever creativity means to you, do that for 1 hour a day and feel that sense of satisfaction you get when you do it yourself, because we get so wrapped up in everyday life that I think I want to inspire people either to attend a workshop that perhaps they've heard about in their neighborhood, in their area, or start their own workshop. And maybe, and you can speak to this, we're not going to start, selling out the United Center, which is our big, where they play basketball here in Chicago. But you're not going to start starting out that big. But I think, can you take a hula hoop and stand inside of your hula hoop, look around the hula hoop and see what's available to you? Is that a good place to start?
So just in terms of
location, people, community.
I would say
friends.
looking at ways to reach people, like maybe printing flyers and like asking if you can put them in the local coffee shop or things like that. And then looking at local venues that are going to be more affordable for when you're starting out. So things like, community centers, even like libraries and things like that have meeting rooms. Those would probably be the more affordable options as opposed to like commercial venues. But yeah, definitely just like seeing what's around, again, doing the research, doing a Google search and seeing if anyone else is already out there doing what you're thinking of doing. And just the ability to pivot, I think, is really good with a workshop business, because, you're being an entrepreneur, you're doing something that is a bit unconventional. And so the ability to pivot and adapt to the market and to be offering something that there is a demand for.
I brought this up. I'm going to ask you, is this just a millennial thing, a new way of making a living, or is this for people who have been crafting and sewing and being creative as a hobby for years and years and years and years?
I think it can apply to anybody, but the person who does workshops, they do have to kind of be comfortable outside of their comfort zone, comfortable trying something new, comfortable, taking a bit of a risk. Like when I started out, I didn't really have any guarantees that it was going to work, but I had just like tried so many other different things. And I was also at the time, I had a studio in the city centre in Christchurch that I was paying rent for, and it was like a shop. But then, so I had a shop, but no one was coming to my shop and buying things because of the pandemic. So I was like, crap, I have to pay rent for this place. What am I going to do? So it was like that lit a fire under my butt, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to try workshops. I'm going to try events because people are not coming out to buy things. And so that was a big motivator as well, because it was like, well, I have a space. That's not being used because no one is coming here. No one cares about my shop. But maybe I can fill this space with people who want to come to an event.
And good
that
for
was
you.
something, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about diving into the business. Are we talking about more than just a side hustle, or can this be a side hustle that's very lucrative?
I think so. I mean, it was for me, and I was only ever doing it part-time because I had a young child,
Right.
and she wasn't in school or anything. So it was like I always needed to be available for her. I would look after her during the week, and then on the weekends, my mum would help me look after her, and I would do workshops. In terms of like who can do this and is it better for millennials? I think that it's something that anyone can do. It's just you have to have that motivation and that genuine interest to be like, okay, I'm going to try it. And if it doesn't work out right away, like if I come up with a concept that people aren't into, if I don't sell any tickets, I have to be able to pivot and think of something else, and adapt to my market. And if you're not somebody like that who's just like, I'm going to try things, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to try something else. Like, if you're, not like that, then it might not be the right choice for you.
So you talked about burnout. So it's like a chef has no food in the refrigerator. A fitness expert has no time to work out. They're burnt out. They don't have time for themselves. If you're a creative person, sometimes your hobby is just diving in and getting lost in what you're doing creatively, or getting lost in your hobby. How did you stay creative and avoid burnout?
I think that, to be completely honest, I used to craft a lot more for the love of it before I started doing workshops, and even before I started selling earrings. I think the moment I started trying to turn it into something where I was making money, it suddenly became something that I wasn't doing just to be creative and have an outlet. Like, it just changes. I guess it's still an outlet. You're still doing something fun, but as soon as you're trying to make money from it, it becomes more of a, like, you've got goals, it's like goal oriented. And if you're not meeting and achieving those goals, you kind of feel bad about yourself. At least that's how it was for me. Maybe this is, it's going to be different for everybody, I'm sure. But for me, I think once I was doing it to make money from it, I stopped, I wasn't going to be just sitting around making earrings that I would want to wear. I was just like, I was filling orders and I was making earrings then, and then I didn't want to touch any polymer clay after that. It's like I would make the orders, I would make the earrings, I would fulfill the orders, send them to be shipped out, and then I just wanted to do something completely different that wasn't related to polymer clay.
Of course you did.
And I think that was similar with the workshops as well. Like, to be completely honest, once I was doing workshops and hosting people, after I'd finish a workshop, I didn't want to do anything creative. Certainly not with polymer clay when I was doing polymer clay workshops, because all of a sudden my crafting was my work. It wasn't just a hobby, which is great though, I think, because that was sort of what I'd been looking for like 10 years and trying to figure out, and never figured out, was like, how do I make money off of my my hobbies? And then I figured it out, and then I guess just like that was the sacrifice.
But the money was good, and the money was a driving thing for you.
Yeah.
And you hit the milestone of $100,000 in revenue doing this part-time. You still got to have a life. You still got to see your mom. You still got to hang out with the baby. And then you still got to make money doing something that you love, and you got to meet new people. So give us your biggest learning moment, or best behind the scenes secret of success.
I think that once I started taking it more seriously and being more organized and doing more prep, like behind the scenes, that was when my workshop started flowing better. I think for the first 6 months, I was sort of like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just like winging so much of it. I would do minimal prep and I would just like go with the flow. And that worked for the most part, but then I would also get super stressed out if, that lack of preparation started to show. If all of a sudden, like with the polymer clay workshops, you have to have all these jewelry findings and you have to be super prepared and make sure that everyone has all the materials that they need. And to begin with, it's like, every workshop that I did, I would progress in terms of like, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't, this is what I'm going to change for the future. And so it was like just constantly learning, which was really fun in its own way. It was a challenge, and it could, sometimes it was stressful, but it was also like, okay, now I'm motivated to change this for the next workshop so I don't get stressed out by this. And so eventually, like, I figured out that I would try and make things easier for myself later down the track by spending an extra hour at the start, just making sure that everything was in place and everybody already had all of the materials that they needed. And that just made the workshop flow better.
Yeah, I agree. Prep is important for
Yeah.
anything. It's important
Yeah.
anytime, in my business, if I'm doing
Mhm.
an interview, if I'm setting up a shoot,
Yeah.
if I'm doing a
Mhm.
podcast, I got to
Yeah.
do my research. I got to do the prep. Sometimes we don't
Yeah.
want to, but we do. Even if we're doing a
Yeah.
live show and showing if I'm doing some sort of sustainable fashion update and I'm going to show you how to put new sleeves on a t-shirt, I have to have 3 and 4 of those shirts ready to go. Do I want to
Right,
always do
yeah.
the prep? Not really, but we learn that prep is the
Yeah.
most important thing. So if
Mhm.
we're prepping for that, the next thing, if people say, you know what, I think I want to do this, I'll go to my community center. I'll talk to my friends. I'll find a business. I'll go to church and see where I can start the first one. But if you're saying from a business perspective and you want to encourage people to try this, where do they start?
I think that one of the benefits about doing workshops is that you can always gauge interest and gauge the market ahead of time. So if you've got a venue that's kind of flexible where you're like, I think that I want to host this workshop here on this date, but can you be flexible? Can I kind of just can I book it and pay for it and then get a refund if I don't go ahead with it? Those sorts of things where it's like I don't have to commit too much money ahead of time just in case I change my mind. Then that can be great, because then you can just try and go ahead and sell tickets to it before you've even bought your materials, because you're just trying to gauge interest. And so, I'm going to let's say I'm going to advertise this thing. I'm going to see if I can sell 20 tickets. If I can sell 20 tickets, then cool. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to buy all my materials then once I know that people are going to be coming. And I would do that a lot as well. If I was trying out a new craft, I would sort of try and sell the tickets ahead of time and just make sure. And if I wasn't able to sell enough, then I would just cancel the event and refund any people that had bought it and just be like, sorry, I didn't sell enough tickets for the event to be worth it for my time to go ahead. And I would scrap that idea and then I would move on to a different idea.
I like it. You have no fear. Yeah. You're just out there. You're doing it. And,
I think
you even said you're introverted, but you're out there saying, I'm going to put this out there. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to come back. I love that. You're just wide open and you're like, this is what I'm doing. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, a lot of people are just stuck in fear. And I feel like if you're going to start a new business or you're going to do a workshop, you have to be able to take a risk and have no fear.
Yeah. And I think that it was a good fit for me because I am a crafty person. I am a crafter, but I've also always self-identified as an entrepreneur. So it's like I'm willing to just give this a go. And if it doesn't work, I'll just try something else. I guess that's a different kind of being a creative. It's like I want to come up with a different idea that might make money.
So you took your creative passion, turned it into a business. You hit a tremendous milestone, $100,000, working part-time, doing something that you love. And now you want everybody else to do the same, which is why we're talking today, because we want to inspire all of my friends that are listening to Creative Living. You're sharing what you discovered on a bigger stage. You're teaching a master class called On Your Way to 100K Master Class. Tell us about that.
The way that I created the course was I tried to think of all of the things that I would have, everything that I needed to know, as well as all of the things that I would have liked to know before I started. Because when I started, I didn't have anybody to be my support person or cheerleader. I was just kind of figuring it all out by myself, completely blind. And that inspired me, I guess, to make the course, because it's like, well, I figured out all the things that I needed to, but it was painful sometimes. I made some mistakes along the way. There are some things that happened that, I would, if I had to do over again, I wouldn't do. There was a lot of times where I was unsure if I was doing the right thing. It's usually they say that if you're questioning yourself, you're probably doing something right. But that's really hard to kind of push through when you're kind of figuring it all out by yourself as well. So it's like, I think I liked the idea of being somebody who could, be a support person to other creatives who were like, I hear what you're saying and I feel inspired to try this. I don't really know what I'm doing with it and I don't know where to start. I wanted to try and be able to make it kind of simple. And so with the masterclass, it's like, it's all of the things that you need to know, from like the real basics of branding and creating like a new brand that people are going to find interesting and are going to be able to resonate with and be like, okay, I see what you're doing and I'm interested in this and I want to come to one of your workshops. So it's things like branding and marketing, and then also things like advertising basics of like different ways to advertising on a budget. And then also to things like trying to figure out, what your first craft is going to be, what you're going to do if you choose a craft and then change your mind.
I think that's cool. Where is the masterclass available? How can we find it?
So there's information on our website about it. Our website is www.100kartist.com, and that is where you can read about why I made the masterclass and all of the things that are included in the masterclass. You can get a feel for if you think it might be the right fit for you. We do offer a full refund as well if you do purchase it and then decide that it's not right for you, because I don't want to be selling it to anybody who's like, just buys it on a whim and then is like, why did I buy this?
Words of wisdom for somebody who is wanting to start a craft workshop business.
I think that just be willing to give it a go and just try something that takes you out of your comfort zone. I think that, we've talked a lot in the episode about pivoting and adapting. And I think, just being, if you're prepared to do the work and, it's not going to happen instantly, it is going to take some blood, sweat and tears. But if you're prepared for that, then I think just giving it a go, doing, your research for what's going on in your city, coming up with an idea, finding a venue, running some ads on Facebook, or, finding organic local ways to advertise and to reach people, letting them know what's happening, flyers in a coffee shop or anything like that. Touching base with other people who might be interested. I think just like the best way to just give it a go is to just try it and see how it goes and see how it makes you feel, and then just run with it if it feels right.
That's what I always say. Just get started. Just start.
Yeah, just do it. Like that's it. Just do it.
Do the work that you love, put the time and energy into it, and you will be repaid tenfold from your efforts if you really truly love it. But none of that happens without emotions, without running into closed doors, without having, some highs and some really lows. So it's kind of all part of life, but it's part of this creative life that we live. And you're an entrepreneur, but you also said you're a creative. And I ask everybody this. So Chloe, what does creativity mean to you?
That is a good question. Not really something I think about a lot, actually. I think it's something I take for granted. I think that, and also I've noticed this with my daughter as well. It's so funny. Like, we come into this world and we're all so creative at the beginning. And this was something that one person said to me in a different podcast interview. He was like, if you ask any 4-year-old, 5-year-old kid, are you an artist? They're all going to say yes. Like, every kid is an artist. It's just something that we do. We're all creative when we're young. And then as we grow up, we realize that, life's pretty hard sometimes. We have to pay the bills. We don't like being creative. It becomes a luxury sometimes, I think. So it's like, there are lots of different things. It's a luxury, maybe I've got, I have a job and I have kids and I don't have time to be creative. What are you talking about? Like, you have those sorts of people. And then at my workshops, I would also have a lot of people who would almost apologize to me when they were there, being like, I'm sorry, I'm not creative. You're going to have to help me as I make this thing. And so it's just like one thing that I liked about the workshops was that I could kind of empower people and be like, no, you are creative. Everybody, I think, is creative, but it's just that not everybody has the opportunity to always constantly be exploring that. And so that was kind of what being creative for me was. It was like, I'm going to try and inspire other people to be creative, and I'm going to try and like use my enthusiasm to make other people feel enthusiastic about what they're doing. So I think being creative can, change throughout a person's lifetime, and it's going to look different on each different person as well.
Well, that is why I ask everybody the question, because creativity is different for every single person out there. And I love when I meet people in the airport or when I meet you at the gym or on the street and they say, hey, this is what I did to be creative. This is what I did. And it's always different. It could be, writing, it could be reading, it could be cooking. And that is what we touch on here. And the idea and the goal is to inspire everybody to just be creative in their own way. Yeah. Even for an hour a day, whether it's with polymer clay or whether it's, doing something else or taking a class or to continue what you already do creatively. It's an important subject to talk about. Adults don't get to get the glue and the scissors and the crayons every day.
What I found is that people love it as well. People love the opportunity to be creative, and that's why people come to the workshops and why they enjoy the workshops. It's because they get to do something, where they have permission to kind of be a kid. And that's how I always treat the workshops. It's like, I'm just trying to create a safe space for you to explore yourself.
Because we get so caught up in the news cycle and the big game and all the things. And I'm like, well, creativity is right there. We're all just human beings living a life on this plane together. So you can put your energy and emphasis into whatever you want to put it into today. Make creativity one of those places. And that's what makes me so happy. And Chloe, I love what you've done. I love what you're doing. I love that you're inspiring others to do the same. Tell us where we can find you. Again, give us your website, and is there social media?
Yep. So the website is www.100kartist.com, and Instagram is a good social media platform to find me on, and that's at 100kartist. Contact me, ask me questions. I love it when people are just contact me directly and are like, I have this idea, I really want to do this, but I don't know where to start. That's all that I want to do, is I just want to help people try something and be successful at it. And if you would like to see a visualization of what a workshop business looks like, then I would recommend having a look at my workshop business website, which is www.Creative Otautahi, which is spelled Otautahi.com. And then you can kind of see, what a functioning workshop business who's, currently running workshops and things looks like. And, maybe it will provide some inspiration for what you would want your workshop business to look like.
100kartist.com. Okay, friends, you've heard it here. Whether you've been crafting and creating for decades or you are just starting out, get inspired, replay this interview, and this time take notes. Chloe, great information. Thank you so much. What an inspiration to all of us. Chloe Winstanley, thank you so much for joining us on Creative Living.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thanks for having me.
Live better creatively. For more inspiration, visit janeclouse.com. Thank you for listening.